In this video, we are going to talk about Virtualsprotocol, some of its recent price action, the important support and resistance areas, and where we can expect the price of Virtuals to go in the next few days and weeks. So we will be looking at the weekly chart, and what we can see here is that Virtual has been in this wedge since late 2024. We've seen Virtual hold onto these two trend lines, and with wedges, since we don't have a clear trend upwards or downwards, what we have is lower highs as well as higher lows. What eventually happens is that the price breaks out of the wedge either upwards or downwards, and this usually leads to a pretty significant move to the direction that it breaks out to. And in the last few months, since basically the start of 2026, we've seen Virtual break out of this wedge downwards. We've seen it break below this trend line that held for over a year, and then since then it rallied back up to the trend line and got rejected off of it as a resistance, and now Virtual is at this level of around 60 cents, which is also where it was back in February, and it got support from that area. So Virtual is trying to hold onto this area again and get support from here. This is also very similar to what we are seeing on the Bitcoin chart, actually very similar in both the structure and the actual numbers on the chart. We've seen Bitcoin go all the way down to about 60k back in February and then get a relief rally from there all the way up to 82k and then dump back down to 60k. And with Virtual, we are seeing a very similar thing. Back in February, it dumped all the way down to about 60 cents and then got a rally to about 90 cents, and then it dumped all the way back down to where it was in February at around 60 cents again. So this is a very similar structure to Bitcoin, both the relief rally creating a lower high right here as well as the dump right after. And now Virtual is trying to get support from here. Bitcoin already managed to get some support from the area of about 60k, and it rallied all the way up to around 66k or so. And in my opinion, this relief rally by Bitcoin will continue a bit further in the coming weeks, and I am expecting Bitcoin to head to about 70 to 75k or so. I think that Bitcoin will create another higher low sometime in the next few weeks, since Bitcoin reached this area of support of about 60k, as well as the daily RSI for Bitcoin reaching very oversold levels. The RSI for Bitcoin reached about 15, which is incredibly oversold, and it is also the same level that the RSI for Bitcoin was at back in February. So it is the same RSI and the price for Bitcoin back then, and we are seeing the same price for Virtual as well. So I think that Bitcoin is quite likely to get a relief rally in the coming weeks, and then it is pretty likely for Virtual to follow it, just like we've seen it follow it in the last few months. I think that another relief rally for Virtual is quite likely, and just like with Bitcoin, I am expecting it to be a lower high. Also guys, if you're enjoying these videos and you want more updates about Virtuals, if you are getting any value from these updates, make sure to subscribe. It helps the channel a lot. Hit that subscribe button. And now let's continue on with the analysis. We have a bit of resistance at around the 75 cent area right here. We've seen it behave as support once here and resistance back in 2025 as well. We could also draw this trend line from the two recent highs, and the trend line is currently at about 85 cents. So this is also another goal for the relief rally. So I think this is pretty likely actually to be at around this area. From 75 to 85 cents is where I would expect the relief rally for Virtual to stop at, and then I am expecting it to get rejected off of that area, similarly to Bitcoin, and continue dumping further and head below the recent low as well as the low from back in February eventually, and head below 50 cents in the long term. So in the short term, I am expecting Virtual to probably follow Bitcoin and get some support. Of course, this isn't guaranteed. Bitcoin rallying doesn't guarantee altcoins following it always. Many times we see altcoins being significantly delayed behind Bitcoin, and it could only consolidate, and if Bitcoin continues dumping further, then Virtuals will probably dump as well. But I do think that it is quite likely for Virtual to continue following Bitcoin just like it has basically for the entirety of 2026, get a bit of a relief rally again, get rejected at this trend line, and then continue dumping from there. This seems like the most likely scenario in my opinion at the moment. And then from there, once it does break down below this area of support at around 55 cents, the next one would be here at around 45 cents. This is the low from back in March of 2025. This is a very significant low, as well as some resistance right here from back in 2024. So this seems to be the next major support area for Virtual. And below that, really the next support area would be much lower. And despite me thinking that Bitcoin will get a relief rally sometime pretty soon, I do think that Bitcoin is still in a bear market, as well as the entire crypto market, of course. Since Bitcoin leads the crypto market, I am expecting Bitcoin to get a lower high and continue the overall downtrend and eventually break down below 60k and create new lows for this bear market. And if that does happen, then virtuals will probably also lose many support areas and continue dumping much further and continue its downtrend since 2025, and then it could drop even much lower and get down to support areas that it had all the way back in 2024. So it could lead to a major dump by virtual, and it could lead to it in the long term being in a downturn for a very, very long time. I think that most altcoins will really struggle for the rest of 2026 and possibly even much further than that, even for 2027 and beyond that. I think that Bitcoin is still in a bear market, as I said, and I would only expect it to be back in a bull market at the very earliest sometime later in 2026, and possibly even later than that. And even once Bitcoin is back into the bull market, altcoins tend to be very behind Bitcoin on that, and usually we see altcoins underperforming Bitcoin for most of the bear market and then for most of the bull market following that as well. I am expecting most altcoins in the long term to significantly underperform Bitcoin for a very long period of time. And really, I think that the chances of an altcoin season, of us seeing altcoins significantly outperform Bitcoin for a long period of time, are very slim anytime soon. And it could take years before we see that happen, and another altcoin season like what we've seen back in 2021 as well as 2017. And I don't really see a reason to why Virtualsprotocol would be any different. I think that again, in the short term, it is possible for it to get a bit of a rally, but in the long term, I would definitely expect it to continue this dump. Since it broke down out of this wedge, I think that it will continue to dump further, get rejected off of this trend line, and eventually continue with most altcoins to underperform Bitcoin very significantly for many, many months. Of course, this isn't guaranteed, but this does seem like the most likely scenario in my opinion. So as a whole, I'm quite pessimistic about altcoins. I don't see a reason to why virtuals would be any different, and I would only maybe be into some altcoins very selectively, only ones that have a very good structure and in the short term, like potentially virtuals just in the next couple of weeks, but not anything long term. And I think that the only real long term hold in the crypto market is Bitcoin, maybe a bit of Ethereum at most, but that's basically it. Of course, this isn't financial advice, but that's what I personally think. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it and you want more updates about virtuals as well as other altcoins and the crypto market in general, make sure to subscribe. It helps the channel a lot and it allows me to continue making these updates. So that's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.